This is a visual representation for the backend of my social media application written in SQL and hosted on Firebase. All this is made possible by the new DataConnect service, and I absolutely love how easy they have made it to get started. Let's quickly go over a simple use case where you might want to use DataConnect instead of Firestore. Say you're responsible for developing the front end and the back end of a social media feed. Visually, it might look something like this. Every single post will fetch the content of the post along with the username and a picture of the author. Now, how would you do that using Firestore? You could have a users collection that contains user data and a post collection that contains post data. The problem occurs when you try to map a user with the post. There are essentially two ways to do it. You could either map them by storing the entire structure of the user data, which is bad because you're losing on the flexibility that a properly mapped data provides. The other way is to maintain that flexibility by mapping a post to an immutable value such as the UID. But this leads us into another problem. Every time a post is loaded on the client side, you'd be required to query their latest data from the user's collection. Now, as a Flutter developer, imagine maintaining a post model, a user model, their equivalent JSON converters, mapping and querying them along with ensuring a smooth user experience. Believe me, things get really difficult as the complexity increases and it becomes harder to scale such a system. These problems are easily addressable by any SQL-based system like DataConnect. Let me start off by showing you exactly what we are going to build today. So this is a simple application that I've put together. I can provide a username. This is a mocked authentication. I'm not actually authenticating users. So I have a user with the username Ronak99. Now this picture field is only relevant if I'm creating a new user. This user with this particular username already exists. So I can just provide anything in the picture field and I will be signed in. Let's say if I were creating a new user, Tom Cruise. And now if I try to sign in, it will associate this random value with the picture, which is something that we would not want. So let's try to get an actual image and sign in. There you go. And now a new user was created with the profile picture, but this is not the main feature, obviously. The main feature is we'll be able to query all the posts along with their comments, the user ID, the comment data, everything all together without writing any extra code which we would have had to write if we were using Firestore. Let me quickly create a post. Create post. There you go. As you might have noticed, after creating a post, I had to refresh the entire UI. This was necessary because the list is wrapped in a future builder and I had to query all the posts again as there isn't a Firestore stream equivalent for DataConnect at this time. Okay, so that's about it, and let's get into some code. I have created a new Flutter project, and to kick things off, you would need to install the Firebase DataConnect extension. So I'll just show it to you over here. So this is the DataConnect extension that you would need to install. This extension makes it really easy to set up a DataConnect project, work with emulators, and it also helps us in deploying our schema to production. Once you've got that installed, open up your terminal, and we'll need to install or we'll need to add two essential packages to our Flutter project, namely Firebase Core and Firebase DataConnect. Brilliant. Next, you need to initialize a Firebase project within your Flutter project directory, and you can do so with the help of Firebase init. So let me just do it over here. There you go. And you need to select the DataConnect service. Now you can select to create a new project or an existing project. I can maybe just create a new project. Let's provide it a project ID. So I'll just write DataConnect DataConnect Flutter tutorial. Okay, what would you like to call your project? Let's just have it be default. And it's setting up our Google Cloud Platform project. Also, before you proceed, ensure that your Firebase CLI is up to date. So let me just check my version over here. At the time of recording, my version is, I think, 13.23.0. Yeah. Okay, so our Firebase project is ready. Now it's setting up DataConnect for us. For this, we'll just accept the default option. And then it starts downloading the DataConnect emulator. If everything has gone smoothly, you should see a new DataConnect folder in your project directory. In the DataConnect directory, there are two very important configuration files, namely DataConnect.yaml file and the connector.yaml file in the connector directory. The DataConnect.yaml describes the configuration of your DataConnect service. You can use the DataConnect keys to configure one or more DataConnect services in your project. In fact, Here's the entire documentation for what each of those keys mean and how they are supposed to be used. The service ID is supposed to be the Firebase DataConnect service resource. In our case, it is DataConnect_tutorial. Now, this is where we give information about the database. So for example, the source key represents a relative path to directory for schema definitions. It recursively loads all GQL files in this directory. Optional, if not present, defaults to /schema. In our case, it is /schema, and you can find it over here. This is the directory inside of which there is a schema.gql file. We can just remove everything from here as we are going to create a new schema from scratch. The important key over here is this connector directories. This is basically the relative path to directories for connector definitions. So this is the second important directory that I mentioned, which is the connector directory, inside of which we have connector.yaml. I believe that this file is called connector as it connects our GraphQL mutations and queries to client platform by generating type-safe client SDKs. Let's take a look at the file generated by default. There is a default.dart file which hosts a class named default connector, and it declares itself to be a part of a default connector library. Let's go back to the connector.yaml file and set the connector ID to social.api and see what happens. Notice that the generated file has been renamed to socialapi.dart, and it now hosts a class called social API connector. We can update the library name by altering the value of the package property. So I'll set the package property to social API as well. I prefer to set the output directory parameter to lib/generated. After saving the connector.yaml, let's wait for it to generate the Dart SDK within the lib folder. There you go. We can now use this social API connector to call our GraphQL mutations and queries. I'll demonstrate that in a short while. These files allow us to define CRUD operations. All the read operations are defined within the queries.gql file, and all the create, update, and delete operations, basically anything that can modify or mutate the database, are written within the mutations.gql file. Let's start by designing a schema. I'll write type user for our user object, then use the @table directive. Anything that has @ associated with it in GraphQL is known as a directive. In this case, the @table describes our user object as a table. I'll pass in a name, users, then I'll set singular to user and plural to users. This helps us in writing readable queries. When you wish to query a single record from a table, such as details of a user based on their UID, you would do so using the value of the singular key. For example, this query returns a single user and it uses the user keyword. On the other hand, if we were trying to look up for a user based on their username, we are searching through multiple users, and hence the value of the plural key would be used to define such a query. For example, this. Internally, these scripts are smart enough to come up with an appropriate name for such use cases. Therefore, both the singular and the plural keys are optional. Let's now add a key parameter. The key parameter essentially defines a primary key for the table. Now, I'll define ID, set it to UUID. Within the column directive, I'll write name, user ID. This autocorrect is working because of the Firebase DataConnect extension. So that's why the Firebase DataConnect extension is really, really useful. Now I want to provide some default value to our UUID, which will be UUID v4. I'm getting all of this from their documentation itself, which you can check out over here. I'll link it down below in the description. Let's go, and I would like my users to have a username as well. So I'll write @column name username. This time we can even define a data type for this. So maybe we want our usernames to be only of 30 characters or less than 30 characters. And then we can even define a picture string. The column name could be picture. And finally, add default value. I can set this value as default. So if picture was not provided, or if it was null or something went wrong, it will have this as the default value as soon as the record is created. Let's move on to defining posts. This is where the magic of relational database will be highlighted. So I'll write type post, and this will essentially be similar to what we already have. What happened? Oh, yeah. In the table, the name of the table for posts will be posts. A singular post will be post, plural will be posts. the primary key will be the ID. Over here we can write post ID. Now our post will have a content field of type string, and let's also add a timestamp field, timestamp, for which the default value will be request.time. And now comes the interesting part. Over here we will write author, set it to our user type, and we'll have to create a reference using the @ref directive. So you can even see over here it says that it defines a foreign key reference to another table. I mean, a single user can create multiple posts, so we are creating a one-to-many relationship over here. So here's what this is going to do. It's going to create an author ID of type UUID. This will be created by the @ref directive. Let's just add a comments table as well. So over here I'll write table name comments, singular will be a comment, plural will be comments, key. For this table as well, the primary key is ID. For ID, I'll just copy the same line. Each and every comment will have content as well of type string. Each and every comment will have an author. It will have a reference to the user table, and then there will be a post property which will have a reference to the post table. Again, this @ref directive that we are using over here will create an author ID field like this, refers to the author, and it will automatically create a post ID as well, which will refer to post. So that is about it for our schema. We only need a user, post, comments. If you go over to Firebase Data Connect, what I want you to do is start the emulator. And in the first time, it may take some time. Well, we have run into some issues. Let's see, could not start DataConnect emulator, the port taken. Okay. So the problem was that I have another emulator running. So let me just close that. Okay, let's try again. And there you go. The DataConnect emulator is now running locally. Let's add something to the users table. What you can simply do is come over here and you see that there are two buttons, one for add data, one for read data. Since we are interested in adding data right now, I can just click on that and there you go. I've received a mutation code. Okay, now I get the option to run this query locally. Let's see what happens when I do so. It says that it failed with a status 404. Okay, so I kept on running into this problem, which is emulator request failed with status 404. I'm not exactly sure why that might be happening. If that happens to you, please let me know in the comments down below. I'll spend some time figuring this out, but I cannot stop the tutorial midway, so I'll just use another project in which it is working as expected. So what I simply did was I came over here, I ran the emulators, it started running just like we did before. Over here I can just write read data and run local. There you go. Now you can see how to use the UI over here. So I ran an anonymous query and it returned with 0 results. This is the JSON that it returns, which are 0 users. So I'll just copy this query, go over to the queries.gql file, and I'm going to create a query with name get all users. It's time for us to add some data to the users table. Let's see how that's done. I'm going to go back to the schema.gql file and tap the add button to get a pre-filled query created for me. And it should create a new record within the users table if I run it locally. There you go. The data has been inserted. I can go back to my queries and run local and I get this data. You just saw how to insert data with hard-coded values. This is good for carrying out explicit testing of our mutations. Let us now write mutations that create records with dynamic values. To do so, I'll head over to the mutations file and write mutation create user. We'll need to create a username. Variables in GraphQL are created with the help of this $sign. I'm going to say string, then picture, string. We can also set auth level. So this auth directive allows us to set a certain scope for every request. I'm just going to go with public for now. And I'm going to perform a user insert operation. data, username will take username, and picture will take $picture. Let's see if this works. I'm going to run local, and there you go. It tells me that username and picture are missing, and we provide those values from this variable tab. So for username, I'm going to write Firebase, and for picture, I'm going to write firebase.jpg. Then I'm going to run again, and there you go. Let's also write something to create a post. Create post. What do we require? We require an author ID, UUID, content, string, and at auth level, let's keep it at public as well. Post insert, and look how easily we get all these options to upsert something, to update, to delete, insert, delete many, insert many. We are going to use it to set up some data soon. Post insert, I can write data. For author ID, I'll pass in the author ID. For content, we'll pass in the content. If I run this, again it says author ID is missing, content missing, username missing. So I'll have to add all of those things once again, and you can see how this can get frustrating. Like for example, if I gave all 4 of these parameters, then I had to create a new user. I'll have to remove all of this, redo everything, which is really boring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create queries like these with explicit data so that we can easily test them. However, we cannot create those queries within the mutations.gql because mutations.gql and queries are being constantly watched. Now, like I previously mentioned, I don't want to continuously change variables over here. I would like to hard code some data to quickly test everything. And just look what happens if I try to write create Firebase. I'll have to write user insert data username. If I run this, okay, so it's complaining that you have given the same username. So there's already a user with the username Firebase, and it does not like that. So I'm going to just call it Firebase2 and run locally. There you go, the user is inserted. However, as you can see that within the generated folder, there is this file called create_firebase.dart, and I don't like that because this is not a dynamic endpoint, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, remove this from there, and just create mutations.gql, and this is where all of my test mutations will go. So now if I save it, I don't see anything generated within the generated folder, but I can still test this. Firebase3, run local, there you go. Let's look at how to connect our Flutter app with this emulator. In order to connect with the DataConnect emulator, you're supposed to initialize the Firebase app, then call the use DataConnect emulator function and pass in your local IP address and a port name. This port name is defined within the firebase.json file. And this is where things get interesting. Ignore the code below for now, and I'm going to just create a scaffold over here. Then I'm going to create body, center, child, flat button. Oh, there's no flat button. Text button, child, text, action, on pressed. And this is where I can just call social API connector dot instance dot, and there you go. Everything that we created over there within our mutations, like create user, create post, we can simply access this over here. Create post, you could then come over here and write create a user. You just have to provide the username and a picture. It's as simple as that. And this is not even half of it. The real fun begins when we try to implement complex queries such as table joins. All of the data class nesting is automatically handled by DataConnect. We have finally set up everything we require to work with DataConnect. We have a schema, we know how the queries work, we know how the mutations are going to work. In fact, let me show you how queries are going to work as well. I'm just going to call getAllUsers over here. Get all users. Look at what it returns. It returns all user variables builder. This is not what we want. And if you just call this, it's not really going to do anything. Similarly, if you just call this create user, it's not really going to do anything. You have to call the execute function on this query for it to be executed. Similarly, if I If I just come over here and write social API connector dot instance dot get all users dot execute, let's see what it returns. It returns query result get all users data over here. I'm just going to call it result. We'll have to wait for it. And then I get data, then I get users. Let's say I want the first one. And look, we get ID, picture, and username. Exactly what we specified over here. Now, let's say I just want to show picture. I don't want to show username. All I have to do is just remove the username from there. And over here, the code gets regenerated and all I see are ID and picture exposed to the Flutter client. If I save it again, I get to see username as well. It's fair to say that the generated code simplifies a number of complications for us. Imagine you had to retrieve the details of a user who made the first comment on the first post. You would need to manage class relationships, handle various data types, perform JSON conversions, and ensure type safety. And this is how easy it becomes to carry out the same operation with DataConnect. It performs all the necessary operations internally, taking the burden of model creation off our shoulders. Now then, we can create user, create post. Let's add functionality to delete a post. So you can just write ID, and we can delete a post just by the ID of the post. Write level to public, post delete, ID $ID. For some reason the autocomplete is not working, but anyways, I can then write something to delete our users like $UID, set the level to public, user delete, and I'm also going to allow comments. So I'm just going to write create comment, author ID, which will be a UID, post ID, which will again be a UID, and content. Then I'll set auth to level public, comment insert author ID should be $author ID, content $content, and post ID, which will be $post ID. Notice that files corresponding for each of these mutations are properly being generated. It's time for us to define some hard-coded mutations to insert data in our table. I'll bring in a copy of our dynamic mutations to the test mutations file. We already have 4 records within our users table. Let's try deleting some of them. I'll head over to the test mutations file, go to the delete user mutation, and make it static. I'll delete this record by passing in its ID, and it works. Now I will associate static values to the create user mutation by passing in Flutter as username and flutter.jpg as the picture value. Let's ensure that it is being returned by the getAllUsers query. Let's do the same with the create post mutation. Once a post is created, I'll define a query to get all posts. At first, we'll request for ID and content. It works as expected and returns a list of JSON objects, each of which contain an ID and a content property. My autocorrect for GraphQL file stopped working, so I had to relaunch VS Code, because of which all the records that we added to the users and the post table are gone. Fortunately, we hard-coded mutations. Therefore, we can get all the data back with just one click. Instead of creating one record at a time, let's explore adding multiple records at once. We can do so by making use of the insert many mutations on the user object. We'll pass in data which takes a list of user objects. No surprises there. Along with Flutter, I will create Firebase as a user. Let's repeat the same process for creating multiple post records with a single click. When doing so, don't forget to update the author ID such that it corresponds to the newly created users. Otherwise, DataConnect will throw an exception. Now let's look at how we can get posts in a more data-rich manner. So for now, I can just query the content, time, and the ID of the post. What if I want to get the author of the post? Well, it's pretty simple. All I have to do is write over here author and then supply everything that I need from the author table. So I need the ID of the author, I might need the username, and I might need the picture. As soon as I run this, there you go. Everything will be auto-generated for you within the get all posts endpoint. Over here in your Flutter application, all you have to do is call social API connector.instance.getAllPosts.execute. Let's see what it returns. We'll get the query result. Finally, all you have to do is result.data.posts. Let's just get the first post. And there you go. You can get the content, you can get the time, you can get the ID, you can get the author as well. And then you can get the picture and username, everything right over here. Okay, now let me just launch this app and see where we are right now. My Flutter app is active. And now, what happens if I tap actions? There is an error. Why is there an error? It says that with the message unauthorized, you're not authorized to perform this action. Let's see why that might be the case. So by default, the extension sets the authentication to admin. And in our case, we are unauthenticated. So let's try running this as unauthenticated. And there you go. It says that request failed with status 403. Of course, implementing authentication is out of the scope of this video. So for now, I'll just write auth level and set this to public. And there you go. So this should also work in a Flutter app now. Action. Okay, nothing happened. So what we can do is we can just come over here and write print result.data.posts. There you go. So it also provides a toJSON function. I'll just restart action and there you go. I can now see the ID. I'm Flutter. Then we also have a nested author object as well. Now let's build the Flutter app that I previously showed you. Okay, so I've passed create user page as home to material app, and this is what it looks like within the app. I've declared some variables over here like user ID, post content, form key, post form key. We'll get to all of that later on. And then we have the username and picture. So this is what we are concerned with for now. So as you can see that we just have a text form field. When an onSaved is called on the form key, it will set username to value of username field, and the picture will have the value of the picture field. Now let's write some functionality for the sign in button. I'm going to first check whether our form is valid or not by calling form key.currentState.validate method on that. Sorry. If it's not valid, we'll just return. Then I'll write form key.currentState.save. After this, I will call social API connector.instance.create user, username, picture. We are sure that there will be a username, there will be a picture, and I'm then going to call execute. Let's see what this returns. It returns this, so I'll save it over here, result. And from this result, we can extract data user insert.id. So as you can see that in the data, it returns whatever the operation we performed. And using this query, we performed a user insert operation, which returns ID of the created record. I can then use it or assign it to user ID and call setState. So what this does is it simply mocks the authentication process that we're going for. Now, if the user ID is not null, it means that the user has signed in. So what else would we like to do? Well, I'd like to come over here, check if the user ID is not null. And if it is not, I would like to show expanded child future builder. Now at the top, I would like to show a view within which I could just show which user has signed in so that the user receives some feedback. So basically we need to query the user that has signed in. I'll write get So we only have two queries, get posts and get users. So let me create another one. I would go over here and write query get user, and I would like to query this user using their UID because we have access to their UID. And we can do so by coming over here. Let's pass in an ID of type UUID, user ID, and we are interested in grabbing the ID, username, and the picture. Okay, there you go. A get user file has been created for us. Let me increase the font size a little bit. Okay, so over here I can just write get user and I'll pass user ID. And we then need to execute the query. So we are returned with a query result that looks like that. So if the snapshot is waiting, we simply show a circular progress indicator. If it is not, we will retrieve the data. So we'll retrieve the data from snapshot.data.data.user. Let's check the type of the user. The user type is get user user. Let's see what we're going to do for the UI. I'm just going to create a container, give it a padding of 12 pixel, pass in a column. Then I'm going to simply copy and paste some code, give it a padding of edgeinsets.all 12. Child would be, let's see what we have so far. Okay, I'm going to write Firebase, and the picture of Firebase, I already have it over here. So I'm going to copy that. In fact, let me just do this. Yeah, and sign in. Well, nothing happened because, of course. A very important point to note here. When working with an emulator, ensure that the emulator is working for you. And sign in. And there you go. A user might have been created and there's a text column on the right side. Now, as soon as I would reload the page, I'm going to lose this state. So I would have to again provide a username, provide a picture and sign in, which will again not work because it will go look up in the database and it will find another user with the username Firebase. So in order to deal with this and also mock the login functionality, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check whether this user already exists. And if it does, then we are simply going to assign that user's UID to this user ID variable. Let's see how we can do that. I'm going to first come over here and write instance dot. Now before signing in, obviously we do not have access to their UID since we are mocking a login functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the queries GQL and I'm going to define a function that lets us query users via username. Let's see how that can be done. I'll again make it public. Now this time I'll write users where username is equals to, you can see all these operations that we have to perform on the where keyword. For now I need to match the field exactly, so I'll write eq $username, and we are interested in ID, username and picture. I'm going to come over here and write get user via username. We already have access to username, so I'm going to write that. I'm going to execute this query, which will return a list of users. I'm going to write this. I'm going to set it to result. I'll just rename this to get user. Now I'm going to check if get user.data.list of users with that username, if that list is empty, well then we need to create a new user, and we can do so by uncommenting this piece of code, or else the user ID can simply be get user.data.users.first.id, and we can move the set state down here. Perfect. Let's try to restart the app and see what happens. I'm going to again write Firebase, and now it should find the Firebase username in the database and no longer require the picture field. But of course, we have set a validator on the picture field. So I'm just going to provide some random value and sign in. There you go. And if I go back to queries, run local, I still have just a single user. So that works as expected. And now let's make this look good. So for that, I'm simply going to copy and paste some code. I'm just going to write column, children, row, and let's see what we have. So over here, we got the user, and I'm now utilizing the user variable over here. I'm passing the user.picture to a circle avatar widget and passing the username. Let's see what this looks like. And again, write Firebase, some random value, and there you go. And I also get a create post button. It's not able to show the image. That's because I launched this Flutter app without the disable web security flag. So let me just do that quickly. I'll write flutter run -t chrome, and I'll set the web browser flag to disable web security. Okay, so now I've launched the app with disabled web security, and I'm going to try that once again. There you go, the image loads now. Now let's add the functionality to create post. So first I'm going to wrap the column itself with a form variable, and in the key I'll pass post form key, and just below this row I'm going to create this text form field that says what's on your mind, and as soon as it is saved I'm going to assign the value to post content. Now let's see how are we going to publish this. Now by this point it should be pretty easy for you to implement it on your own. You just have to call social API connector, instance, create post, and we need an author ID. So we already have the author ID in user ID, and we also now have the post content. And don't forget to call the execute function. I remember when I was working with it, I often forgot to call this execute function. So that's it for now, and let's also call set state. Reload, and in my get all posts endpoint, I have 0 posts right now. I'm going to come over here, write Firebase, sign in. I am developing a new social media application. Create post. Let's see if it worked. It didn't. What went wrong? In the terminal it says that unexpected null value. What was null? The post content was null? Oh yes, of course, the post content was null because we did not call post form key dot current state dot save. Do we also have a validator on it? Yes, we do. So it would be better to first call post form key dot current state dot validate. If this happens to be false, we'll return, or else we'll save it first and then call this function. Let's check it now. Firebase, picture, test post, create post, no error. And within queries, if I run local, there you go. I get to see a post along with author, ID, picture, username. Now let's start showing all the posts. It's going to be really easy because we've already done the hard part. So I'm going to write this text all posts over here, then call in an expanded because we need a list, and a list view should always be a child of a flexible widget like expanded or flexible when it is inside a column. So those are just your Flutter basics. Again, I'll call future builder, and this time we want to get all posts dot execute. Then we can get the type from over here. By this point, you notice that we are doing the same thing over and over again. I'm going to retrieve all the posts from snapshot.data.posts variable. And if it is empty, we just want to return an empty list. Let's get the type from here. In fact, we can just copy all of this and write posts. And then we can return a list view.builder. Item count, posts.length. Item builder would be context, I, posts, I, and let's get this post view to render our posts. So I'll just pass in our post. We'll definitely need our user over here. We will need to refresh the entire UI. So I'll write on comment. This will basically become a callback for us. Set state. We'll create a stateful post view. Get all of the constructor variables that we are passing, post, user, and the on comment callback. After that, I'll just define a container, get in some properties over here. And now let's just see what this looks like. I'm just going to write post, content, reload, Firebase. There you go. We get to see our test post. This is my second post. Awesome. This is my third post. Now I don't like that my latest post is below, so I think it would be better to just sort them in a descending order. So what we can do is we can just write order by created at descending, and we'll restart Firebase, some picture, sign in. There you go. My third post is at the top. My recent post, it should be at the very top of the list. Great. So let's quickly finish up the UI for post view and implement the comment functionality as well. So I'll write column, set the cross-axis alignment to start, then children, row, children. Again, we'll do the same thing. We'll just pass circle avatar, set radius to 12, background image to network image. And this time we'll pass post.author.picture. Let's see what difference this made. So I'll write Firebase, again, picture, sign in. And we are now able to see the picture of the user who created the post. So right after showing the user details, I have rendered post content. And over here, we are expecting a comment form key. So let me just create the comment form key over here. Final comment form key equals to global key of type form state, and also create a variable to record comment content. So we have this text field that when saved will populate the comment content variable. Let's see what we have. Sign in. Awesome, that looks nice. Can I comment? Not yet. So let's define the functionality for comment. Again, I'll write social API connector.instance.create comment. We need the author ID, so I'll write widget.user.id, and then content can be extracted from the comment content. Oh, and don't forget to call the validate and save functions like I did previously. So I'll just write current state, validate, return. So if we do not validate, we want to return. And then again, comment form key dot current state dot save, execute. This should work. And finally, we'll call the on comment callback. Now, even if this works, we'll not get to see any change over here because we are not rendering a list of comments. So let's work on that. I'll create a size box of height 5. Now let's think about the query that we're looking for. We are looking for all the comments on a particular post. Do we have something for that as of now? Since we have a one-to-many relationship between our post and the comment table, a comments on post field is generated for us. So I can just come over here and retrieve all comments on a particular post like so. And inside of this, we can specify all the details that we would like to query. So I'd like to query the ID of the comment, I'd like to query the content of the comment, and I'd like to query the details of the author of a particular comment. For this as well, I want ID, username, and picture. So we just updated our get all posts endpoint. Now if I run this again, I will see nothing because there are no comments on any of these posts. Hi. Well, there was an error. It says that null value in column post ID. Oh, of course, we forgot to add a post ID and we didn't even get any error, which means that there is something wrong in our mutations file. So when we try to create a comment, we are passing an author ID, we are passing a post ID, we are passing a content, but we have not made the post ID mandatory, and we can do so like this. And now it's highlighting. So I'll just write post ID widget.post.id. Let's see what happens now. Test comment on my recent post. No errors, which is good. And now I'll just query all posts like so. Let's see. There you go. I received the details of the author who created the post, and I received the details of the author who created the comment, along with the content and the ID of the comment. Now in this case, everything is just the same because we have a single user. So let's add another user. Right, Flutter. Now this time we'll have to provide something meaningful within the picture field. So I'll just copy the URL of the Flutter logo from here and sign in. There you go. This is a comment from or by Flutter. I'll write comment. We can go over to queries, run, and there you go. I receive another comment from Flutter and one comment from Firebase. Now let's render these comments. First, we'll check whether a particular post has any comments or not, and we can do so using the comments on post field, which comes from here. I'll check if this field is not empty. If it is not, I'll write text comments and set the style to theme of context, text theme, body small. Then I'll create a column, set the cross-axis alignment to cross-axis alignment.start, and set the children to the widget.post.comments on post field, which will then map every single comment to a particular UI. So let me just quickly copy and paste the UI like so, and to list. We map over every single comment and we pass the author's picture, author's username, and the content through this UI. Let's see how this looks. Let me just sign in with Flutter, sign in, and there you go. I get to see those two comments. So just come over here, write Firebase, and sign in. So I can write, hey, this is Firebase. There you go. And then let's sign in with Flutter. Hi, new post from Flutter. This is just me testing the overall system and seeing how it all works. Signing in again with Firebase. Hello Flutter. This is Firebase. And the comment is posted. I hope this video acts as a solid starting point for you to start considering DataConnect for some of your side projects. DataConnect is a new service, so I'm sure that it will undergo many changes. Some of them might even be breaking changes that may end up making this video obsolete. Regardless, I covered this topic in such detail because it really excited me the first time I experimented with it. Let me know any of your thoughts or feedbacks regarding this video or your experience in setting up and working with the DataConnect service. You can find the link to the source code, relevant documentation, along with a link to the new Discord channel in the description below. I'll be there to answer any of your queries on Flutter. In the end, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.